Okay, I will try to explain now about how to solve question 9. So question 9 is a bit tricky, and although it appears like a simple thing because it is just about creating a menu that you are able to invoke from that menu all the other functions that you have created in the last 8 exercises. In the previous videos, I already explained about exercises from 1 until 5. And exercises 6, 7, and 8 is actually quite simple. And I will try to focus on question 9 because it took so long time to actually be able to solve it. And one of the key points here that I'm going to explain is actually how to make a menu to include that. And I will also focus on the things that actually create trouble in passing the tests that you have in the canvas. So there is a lot of tests in the canvas that focus on testing these lines that I will going to explain now. So these lines is mentioned in the note. So after you create a menu, this menu details exact text need to be done, and then so you have to create a menu that exactly show every single character that is mentioned here. Okay, a single character that is wrong will cause your canvas test to fail. Okay, so we have to exactly produce that exact menu content. So that's one thing. And the second important topic here is actually, if you look here, this portion. So this portion describe for every menu item what validation checks that you need to do for the input that is given. So, okay, the user will give an input and will choose one of the menu items. Let's say that he choose 1 or 2 or 3 whatsoever. But we want to focus here on the validation because the validation makes the test for the code fails. So you will find that maybe out of 20 tests, 10 pass and another 10 fails. So we have to be very careful about this portion here. This note is very important. Second thing is that we need to be very careful in actually producing the exact text here. Another thing is that if so here you see, you look at the menu. So after exit, you need to produce that, for example, text on a separate line. So this is very important because if you produce 2 lines, two texts here, and you still produce them, but you did not put enter here, for example, which is endl, for example, here in the code. So this endl actually is very important because if you didn't put endl, for example, after you print exit, it means that this line will be printed on the on the screen on the same line like the exit, and that will cause the canvas test to fail. Okay, so this is very important. Now let's have a look about this note before we talk about the code. So this note say the main function should account, your main function should account for any user input that is not a valid sequence. So it means that when you take an input from the user inside the main, not inside the method that you created, inside the main, you should take an input from the user. And when you take an input, you need to make sure that it is a valid sequence. If it is not, if your input is not valid, you should not accept it. If the user input is not a valid sequence, your program should print this statement exact, this error statement until the user enters a valid sequence. This word until means that you need to keep the user in a loop until he enters a valid sequence. If he doesn't enter a valid sequence, you will not allow him to exit or go somewhere else. So you need to keep him in a while loop you need to captivate the user in a while loop until he enter a valid sequence. So how many sequence typically? So if you need to, typically our functions, our methods that we created before, it takes two parameters for our method. So for example, target and maybe a strand or something like that. So so it means that we need to validate the two inputs. So we need for each input a while loop that keep looping if the user does not provide a valid sequence. Okay, so this is very important. And the second important thing is function. Okay, additionally, functions that require, so not all the menu items here you will need to do this validation. Actually, you will need to do in all, but the second requirement here is not needed in all. It will be needed only in a few menu items. Let's have a look. So additionally, functions that require string of the same length, sometimes you need to input a string here and a string here, and both must be the same length. If that is the case, you actually need to validate that for matching lengths. So here you will not keep the user in a loop if the two input is the same length. So what you will do that. Okay, before you start calling anything from the user menu, which is the method that, for example, finds the similarity between the two sequences. Before we do that, we need to make sure that the two input is actually the same length. So if it is not the same length, if the strands are not of the same size, the program should display an error and should return to the menu. So it means that we just show an error and then return back to the menu, which means that we will not execute anything. We will not keep the user in a loop asking him to enter two strings of the same length. We will not do that. But when we was talking about valid resequence, we are saying that if the user does not input a valid sequence, we will keep looping him until he enter a valid sequence. So this is different. So this is two requirements, 1 and 2. Okay, so let us have a look at how this can be achieved. So let me start sharing the code. I think you are able to see the code here. So the code here is asking, so this is the code that produces a menu. So you see how I do. So you see how I put the endl to be able to produce a new line after every menu items. The spaces is very important. Capital letters very important. Endl after every menu line is very important here. You see, okay, and then then the while loop. Why I put the menu in a while loop? I put, first of all, the while loop will keep running until I choose exit. If I choose exit, so this menu will not be displayed anymore. Okay, so to keep showing a menu, we created a boolean or a status variable, and this is a flag variable. So any boolean variable like that, we call it a flag. We set it first to true. So if the condition here is true, the loop will keep running until the condition here become false. Okay, so when it will become false, if I choose 7, which will cause the program to exit. So as you can see here, if I choose 7, so I will print exiting program, and this is exact text produced by the menu that is shown in the exercise. And then I will put this flag variable into false. So it means that once I break from this switch statement, okay, then I will go back to check the condition. If the condition is still true, the while loop will run the menu or will show the menu again. But if it is false, it will just exit, and then we will not run anything anymore. So any choice that the user give will be actually given or taken by the CIN here. Okay, So this is for printing something out in the screen. This is for taking something from the user. So I will store the user input in choice. The user typically will give me a number 1, 2, or until 7. Okay, I will take it and then I will pass that in a switch statement. Okay, so based on the user input, I will run selected cases here. Okay, so in this case, I will explain about case 1, which is finding similarity, calculating the similarity between two sequences of the same length. So just be aware, same length here means that there is another check that we need to perform. Okay, so what if the validation, this is my validation, this is the first validation, this is the second validation, and this is the third validation. If the third validation actually is pass, that means that the user input something correct, then I will call the function that is called strand similarity, and then I will pass it the two input. Okay, I will record a second video that talk about that. Okay, and I will explain also in detail choice 1, and I will end this video like that here.